So, this is a statement that's been guiding our work for several years now. Without a compelling why, the what and the how doesn't really matter. Our FYE some years ago was that. We took them around, we wanted to tell them everything that they needed to know and where they could go and what they could do, and we gave them all this information that none of them remembered. So what we were trying to do was we were trying to say, look, we want them to change their behaviors, and if they change certain behaviors, we'll get different outcomes. But what we're doing now is we're trying to start at the level of belief. What do they think about the university, and what do they believe about the university? What do they think it is, and why do they think it's important? And if we can tackle those issues, then they'll be more apt to do the kinds of behaviors that we want them to do. To study harder, and to eat well, and to be safe, and to engage in extracurricular and co-curricular activities, all of these kinds of things. The way I like to think about this is, I have a good friend and he grew up in a really small town in central Utah, and they had a huge chicken coop. Like 50 chickens. And his job as a young boy and teenager was to muck the chicken coop every spring. And he said to me, it didn't matter if they would have had a better pitchfork or a better process or whatever I could have done to make it more efficient, it was still mucking a chicken coop. Because he didn't believe that was valuable, right? Didn't understand what it meant to like the family and the eating and selling eggs and all that stuff. And the same thing with my teenage boys, trying to help them realize about folding your clothes and putting them in the closet and why they don't see any need for that. It's fine, Dad, I just stuff it all in the drawer. They don't know yet that it's good to smell good when you're a teenager, right? And that you want to be able to find your stuff, all these reasons, because they don't believe it matters. And it doesn't matter if I tell them how to fold it or what to do or how to do it. They don't believe it's valuable. So does that make sense? This is what we're getting at with the students. The first thing, this is not to say that we're not concerned with the what and the how. All the things about setting goals and wellness and career exploration and all these things are really important. But this is where we start. Let me tell you a quick story about how this helps students align to these behaviors. I had a 3,000 level class on organizations. I'm a communication professor, and I have this student, and he's sitting in the front row every day. He's a good student. He's bright. He's personable. He talks to me, talks to his peers. He's having a really good experience. And we go through the semester, and this was a few years ago. And at the end of the semester, I get this email from him, and he says thank you, because at the beginning of every semester, I would do this Becoming a Learner discussion. You got a book, and I know I'm the guy that gave you a copy of his book. I'm sorry. Even before I wrote the book, we just talked about this idea, right? The primary purpose of college isn't to learn a professional set of skills. The primary purpose is to become a learner. And we spent the first week of class talking about that. What it means and why that is. And at the end of the semester, he sends me this email and he's like, thank you, Matt. Like, I was going to quit school. This was going to be my last semester. I didn't understand why I'd had to do all this general education and all these classes. None of it felt good or made sense. And I was just going to go home. I'm a certified personal trainer. I was just going to move back to Salt Lake City and go to work. But now he's going to stay because somebody told him what the purpose of it was all about. And it was fun to watch him take off after that. All the good things he did. But all he needed was for me to tell him a story that's like hundreds and hundreds of years old. Like, this is about the educated person and what it means. This is a way for students who are feeling lost to find themselves in our institutions. To not be wandering around wondering why they're doing all of this stuff. So this is how we engage our students at the very beginning of FYE. We have a one-day orientation in the summer that they need to come to in person if they live within 400 miles. And we walk them through a pretty clear argument, and I get to do this with all the students, and so it makes me feel good. I get to sing and dance, and some audiences are more excited than others in the summer, but I want to walk you through that argument, that kind of story that I tell them. This is a statement that was given to me when I was a sophomore in an honors literature class that I took because it was about C.S. Lewis. And I wanted to read the Chronicles of Narnia, and of course we didn't read the Chronicles of Narnia. We read a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Which is your typical experience taking a class. And I wasn't the brightest kid on campus. I was at a junior college. I was accepted as a night student. But I just wanted to take this class. And he said, the hardest thing for you to know is the thing that you think you already know. The things that are so familiar to us, we stop questioning them. And then we don't often know why we're doing what we're doing. So our students need to do this. Because college to them and school to them is like air. They've been doing it forever. And so they think they know it. They think they get it. But college is a different beast. We all know that. There's some different things about it. Now, certainly our graduation rates and our persistence rates would show us that they need to rethink college and learning because they don't know it perfectly yet. There's too many that are starting and not finishing, and that's too much time, energy, expense, effort to start on the front end and not get the payoff at the end. Students need to we need to rethink and have a serious conversation about why you're here and what this place is, so they can embrace it. The other one is the why questions. Right? Why questions are pleas for meaning. How many of you are forced to take piano lessons or have forced your kids to take piano lessons, right? And kids complain about taking piano lessons when they don't know why they're supposed to be doing it. And some of my kids have done that, and the one who actually can play the piano doesn't, right? Because he's figured out what it means to play. These why questions are important, and I always ask our students to ask why questions. Ask them of their faculty, their advisors, and their administrators, whoever it is. Why questions are important. It just means that there's something that they don't get. If your kid's asking why they have to take piano lessons, they don't understand that piano is about developing your mind and learning another language and developing your talents. And if we don't do it with piano, I'm going to make my kids do it with something. Right? That's why we do those kinds of things. The why questions are important. And in my experience on the campuses that I've been a part of, here are the two questions. Why do I have to take classes in things I'm not interested in and classes in things that aren't connected to the job I want to get when I graduate? Fair question? You've heard these two? They ask these questions when they graduate, and I always say, some of you probably asked those questions as you were coming here today. And they're like, yeah, I was doing that. These are great questions. And they have really good answers, but if you just look at popular media and the news and listen to politicians, there aren't good answers. The answers they get actually cause them to behave in ways that work against their own best interests. And this is especially a problem for our students who are the most vulnerable, who are the least likely to persist and come from backgrounds and circumstances that make college extra hard. So there's good answers. And so I want to give you how I think about this. And I'm going to do it with some learning that I did with our student athletes, our freshman student athletes. They come and they don't get to do the orientation and the things the same because their commitments are so heavy at the beginning of the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall. But they asked me to come in the semester and talk to them about becoming a learner. The book and this idea that they're here to develop themselves to become an educated person. And the first time I did it, I thought it was really appropriate because I'm an athlete. And I thought this will be a good way for me to connect with the population that I share experience with. So this is me at the pinnacle of my athletic career. I was a budding John Stockton back in 1989. I got short shorts. That's about as far as I got to becoming a John Stockton, if any of you are familiar with the old school John Stockton. I loved playing sports, and I wanted to be good at it. But genetics and fortitude and all those things worked against me because I'm not an athlete. And so here I am in front of 100 plus scholarshiped Division I student athletes. And so I wanted to put this question to the test. What's the hardest thing for you to know is the thing that you think you already know? So I asked them a question. I just said, why do you have to do so much exercise and training? Why can't you just play on Saturday? And everyone gets a trophy? And orange slices and a Capri Sun or whatever. Come on, we could just play like this and it would be fun. Why do you do all of this stuff? Why not just show up, have a scrimmage on Wednesday, play your football game or your soccer game on Saturday. We'll all be happy. And I asked them about some specific exercises because I went to the gym once when I was in college. So I know all about it. Have you done this exercise where you do the squat and you put the bar on your shoulders and you go down? So my best friend was a PE major, and he's like, let's go to the gym and we'll work out every day and we'll get strong. I was like, sweet. So we went, and it was the worst experience. It was super painful. Like, this hurts when you do it. You feel like you're just going to go through the floor. And then the next day it's worse, and I lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment building. And of course, most campuses put themselves on a hill and make the students walk up the hill. And I had to go up like 135 steps or something to get onto the campus. And it was really painful. And I asked these athletes, why on earth would you do this exercise? Because have you ever seen this happen in a field of competition? Like this last NBA All-Star game, do they just like start doing this? Nope. That never ever happens. Ever. So why on earth would you waste your time doing that exercise? I asked them this question. And I got these immediate hands go up. Just boom. They wanted the answers. And so this young man on the offensive line is like, look, I block for the run and protect the quarterback. The thigh is the biggest muscle group in my body. I have to have power and thrust and force. So I do that exercise to give myself strong legs. Like, that was good. Right? The volleyball players are talking about the jumping and the strength they need, and the basketball players and the track team, like lungs and legs, that's their whole business. Kicking balls, bursts of speed, like all of these really great answers. And they weren't just like, well, I don't know. That's what my mom did when she played ball, or this is how coach keeps us out of trouble. Like, they weren't these kind of stupid answers of they didn't really know. Like, they had these really quick automatic answers. So I got brave and I asked them about some other exercises, like the bench press, which is sort of like laying under a guillotine. Have you been in a gym when somebody's got the bar on their neck and they're calling for help because they didn't have a spotter? Why would you do that? Nobody ever does this. The same thing, quick automatic answers. Softball players are talking about strong arms and shoulders to throw the ball and swing a bat. Volleyball players, the linemen are talking about making space with their arms. Throwing the ball. Gymnasts hold their whole body weight up on their arms and shoulders. This is why we do this exercise. Then I asked them about running, because this is how you get punished in high school for goofing off. Right? You screw around in gym class and they all of a sudden they make you run stairs, run like ladders there that bottom. That's the worst. It's punishment. Some sports don't run, like volleyball. You play it on beaches and lawns and you kind of hit the ball. And volleyball players do not like that characterization, by the way. They were mad. But why would you do that? I mean, softball bases are 60 feet apart. A basketball court's 120 feet long. I mean, I asked the lineman on the team, why would you do this? You don't run. And if you do, you're on ESPN Top 10. And it's not because you scored a touchdown or picked up a fumble, because that happened all day on Saturday. It's because you were actually physically running. Right? So why would you do that? And again, I got these great answers. They just said, look, if we want to be the ones who are celebrating at the end of the game and holding up a championship banner at the end of the season, we have to play harder at the end than we did at the beginning. We need lots of endurance. And you might not think that volleyball players have to run or softball players, but this takes a ton of energy. And this is why we do it. So again, these really great answers. Why do they have to do so much exercise and training? Like, what's the point? Why do they do all of this stuff? For them, it's to thrive and flourish as an athlete, right? Regardless of the circumstances, the competition, whatever they face, whatever happens to them, they know they're going to make tens of thousands of physical movement and mental strategic decisions in the course of a game, and they need a mind and a body that's capable of doing that. That's a really good answer for a group of people who do a whole bunch of stuff to spend a couple of hours once or twice a week actually competing. Now, what does that have to do with our students? Why do you have to take so many classes and things that you're not interested in, that don't connect to your job? What's the issue, and what's the reason why we ask them to do this? And for them, it's the same as the athlete. To learn how to thrive and flourish as a human being, and to learn how to learn. When our students are writing, they're lifting weights. When they're doing math, they're lifting weights. They're running. They're developing their mind, because they need to be able to have a mind that can do whatever they need to do. They're going to spend their careers solving problems that don't exist yet, using technology we haven't invented, and responding to political and social, cultural conditions that haven't arisen. We're preparing them for a future of unscripted problems. We're not preparing them for their first job, which will be their least interesting of their whole career. Like, we're preparing them for the long run. So we tell our students, this is why you're here. There's an analogous, thing with music. You can learn to just play a song, but that doesn't mean that you're a musician. Musicians have to learn a whole bunch of stuff. This is what we want from our students. And this is a really important message for them to get them to be able to find themselves in the midst of some of that difficulty. To learn how to learn, to thrive and flourish as a human being. I had this great story that's in the book. I met this guy who was an electronic data storage engineer. That's how it was. Long career in IBM. Started in 1959. See this big group of students at the University of Colorado where I was a graduate student. And he says, how many times has the space shrunk that it takes to store data electronically on some medium over the 40 years of my career? 1 billion times. Right? And that story's a decade old, so it's a lot more than 1 billion, right? What used to fit in a room like this can fit on the tip of your finger, on that little stick, and it's in a little stick because you don't want to lose it in the lint in your pocket, right? He said, whatever I learned about electronic data storage was obsolete by the time I graduated, and then my whole career was about people and culture and problem solving and all of these things. Our alumni know these things. So this is the message that we give our students. And this is how we've reorganized our first year experience. We haven't thrown it all away and built anything new. We've just reframed it around 3 big questions. Why am I here? How do I best engage myself in the process of becoming this educated person? And how do I become a fully engaged member of this learning community? And all of our stuff goes in it. And the beautiful thing is instead of taking everybody around to every office and showing them everything which they won't remember, we can still worry about that, but we talk about how you overcome challenges and anticipate problems. And what are the steps that an educated person does to go out and look for the resources they need? Instead of study skills, which our students, a lot of them feel like it's remedial, even though they really need it, we just reframe it to habits of mind. Careful reading, critical analysis, and good writing are not study skills. They're habits of mind that educated people use in the world to do their work. So we just are able to keep tweaking these assignments so that we get them in the right spot. And the beauty of this is it keeps all the people who want the space in your FYE program away from you. Because they're like, we had our art museum, which is wonderful. We need 30 minutes with all the freshmen to tell them about the museum. Your museum's awesome, but it doesn't fit in there. Or why don't you host an event in the evening and we'll give advertisements. This allows us to really be laser focused in our FYE programs around specific objectives. And again, we want them to do all of these wonderful things. But if they know what this place is and why they're here and why an education matters, they have good outcomes. They do better and they stay longer. We're still working really hard to change this narrative, to give them a better story to hang on to so they can get through their struggles. And again, especially for our students from underrepresented populations, from low socioeconomic status and other circumstances that makes it hard. We want them, even if they're studying their class and they're lifting those weights, but it's a history class and they're reading something and they go home for Thanksgiving, we want them to be able to explain to their family why this is important. So thank you.